Next, what you want to do is take your spring, push it all the way down, and then make sure that you're installing this in the correct direction. So this pretend looking spring, some models actually be a spring. This is the top. So what you're going to do is put that towards the table and this rod pointing up towards you. Take this opening and have that pointing up as well. And we will install this back into the assembly. Now with the spring, you got the push on it. So push and then squeeze this top and it'll lock into place. Alright, it's now locked in place. Grab one of the screws that I left out here. There are a couple different sizes, so make sure you're grabbing the right one. I know this flat one goes down here on the bottom, so I'll go ahead and get that guy installed. Okay, once you get one installed, you can actually let go of it now, and we'll just do the rest of the screws. Now when you reassemble these, be very careful. I can already see that somebody cracked one of these when they took it out before, probably trying to figure out what's going on with it. This one, this bracket down here is cracked. Now it's really not that big of a deal, but at the same time, if this breaks off, this whole front assembly is done. You're gonna have to replace this whole front assembly. So be very careful. So if this ends up happening to you, I recommend maybe getting a small dab of super glue or some type of a strong adhesive and push it in there to make sure that this doesn't come apart. Alright, so now that we have this front assembly all set up, you want to test that the spring is working, nothing's jamming or bound. It is good to go for me. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the upper receiver and get this rebuilt. Next step will be to make sure that it's still split. If you guys don't know how to split it, watch my video on the takedown of the G36. I'll show you how to get this split open like that. Once that's open, take the hop-up unit and assembly here and put it in at an angle. Don't try to slide it in forward here. It's not going to go in. So come in at an angle, and then once it gets all the way back, you can, there. So right here, you're going to come at the angle, and then you're going to have to move it back and forth to get it past the little grooves here. There you go. So mine's all nice and snug in there. Take your wiring harness and get this all set up for the gearbox. Don't screw this in yet, because it's going to be very difficult getting this wire all set up once everything's clamped down on it. So you look in here, there's a little hook. What you want to do is push your wires underneath that little hook so that it holds it in place. Okay, I got that guy all set up, and then the wire sitting right here waiting for me to plug the gearbox in. Once that's all together, we can start redoing all the screws right here. I'm gonna grab my little tin here, container that I had. Pull out the body screws here. Alright. I like to start with the two longer ones. They go here and here. Alright. Now, there are tiny nuts on the side of here. Now, if these fall out, make sure you put them with all your screws. Sometimes, like mine, they just stayed in place. Okay, now that we have those four upper receivers together, We'll go ahead and make sure everything's loose, functioning, nothing's jamming, barrel's in place. Okay. We can now take the gearbox assembly and we can get it dropped into place. Start by angling it and making sure that your wires go down the side of the panel here. Once you have it in, don't try to force it down once it's here, because you're going to hit the hop-up unit and crack your hop-up unit. Just reach in with your finger and pull the hop-up unit back. You can see the whole gearbox just dropped into place. And it's in. We'll go ahead and plug the wires in. And then once they're connected, take your whole wiring set and push it away from the spool here for the hop-up unit. You want to keep that free moving. You don't want the wires jamming on it or anything. Okay, once you have that sitting against the side and away from the spool, you can take your magazine well and drop them into place. Just use caution when you're doing this. There's a wire here, and if you damage that wire by slapping it in, your gun's not going to work. So make sure that if it's in the way, you can just very carefully reach in here and push it out of the way. And then we'll go ahead and grab the pin for the magazine well. The magazine well may look and be the same size as your handguard pin, although most of the time the magazine well will have these X-shape notches that are on them. And if you see, there's actually X shape here, so just make sure that you get the right one. Go ahead and push that all the way in. Now this is all stable. We will grab the two gearbox and lower receiver screws and put them in. Now we can move to the rail system and the rear sight. Grab your rear sight here, or sorry, your rail system. Slide it into place. Now these little spacers here, each one of these has a threaded side and a non-threaded. So make sure that you don't mix a threaded with a threaded, otherwise one of these pins will never stay in place and just keep falling out. We'll go ahead and get that installed. Alright, now before you do this last pin here, what you're going to want to do is actually install the rear sight. So this rear sight has this little notch here. This does not line up with this larger hole. It actually lines up with the small pinhole that's next to it. Drop this guy in here and take this pin that you pushed out earlier. Just push him back in place. Should go nice and smooth in. Sometimes when they're new, they'll be a little difficult to get out, but you really shouldn't have to get a hammer or anything on it and really beat on it. And then we can take the last screw here for the rail and get him installed. Okay, now it's starting to look like an AEG again. Grab the stock, push him on, and then the stock pin has a large groove on one side. Take that end, and that's the end you're going to want on the bottom. So start from the top, make sure everything's lined up. And you should be able to just push him in. There you go. Maybe I did it by hand. Make sure it's all flush. All right. On the back of the AG, you're going to have this open hole. Take your Allen key here, drop them in there. All right. Now you can take your handguard. Install him on, and then do your last body pin. And that's it. You rebuilt your AEG. Thanks for watching.